What's up, Mooncutter fans? As always, Joffrey Curry here. And today is probably the most excited I've been for an episode of this, especially since I started the series with the offseason breakdowns for the NFL. Because today I am being joined by both a commissioner and a coach. Starting off with the man that made the other one possible. Welcome to the panel from TSS Fantasy Podcast show, Commissioner Cooper. How's it going today, sir?
It's going great. Thank you so much for having me in. Excited to talk about America's team, the Miami Dolphins, here today.
I mean, that's definitely the first one I've heard call the Dolphins that. Most people are thinking of your neighbors a few hours away, but I like the enthusiasm. I love the passion. I've enjoyed everything I've seen with you guys discussing them. And my fans know that I'm a diehard Jets fan. I try not to be biased, but today I think I might have to a little bit because much thanks to you, Commissioner Cooper, because you made this happen. But we are also being joined this morning by a legend and one of the men that was played an amazingly large, for lack of the word I'm looking for, role in the Jets, making it and appearing in both the 2009 and 2010 AFC Championship games. Please welcome special teams coach Mike Westhoff.
Thank you very much. Thank you. No, I'm happy. I've got both sides covered now. I spent a long time at Miami, 15, 16 years down there, and then of course my 12 years right after that with the New York Jets. So I've got both sides of the fence pretty well covered here. And we won a lot of games at both places, frankly, when I was there. So I'm not taking credit for that, but I was part of it, so I'm proud of that.
Coach is ready to double date us this morning. Zero problems, indeed.
So, wait, is this a double date, or is he here to play or is he more here to play mediator?
Could be both. We'll see.
So, anyways, what I guess let's start with the basics. You want to tell the fans about what you guys do at TSS?
Sure, yeah. TSS Fantasy. Go to our website, tssfantasy.com. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Right now, we're giving a signed Hall of Fame Leroy Butler jersey for all of our new subscribers. We're giving that away Hall of Fame weekend, so you'll want to check that out. We are basically a fantasy show, but we are unlike other fantasy shows. We don't just sit around and talk a lot. We have games. We do a lot of fun segments and stuff, so just go check us out. Again, we made TSS and essentially a kind of a middle finger to the experts, quote unquote, because quite frankly, I've been playing fantasy football for a long time. We're all just guessing. So why not just come watch us have some fun while we all guess and try to figure out this wacky NFL?
Could not have said it better. And Coach, I know you've got some big news here as well. And I can't wait to hear you go over that, but we're going to save that for a little bit later on in the episode, if you don't mind.
Okay, no, that's fine, sure.
Let's jump right into it. This has been, in my opinion, probably the craziest offseason ever, including trades, just overall free agency moves, the draft. There's a lot to unpack here. Well, let's jump in, go position by position with the moves that your Dolphins, their commissioner, have taken. Starting with one of the more shocking ones, and I will say it's probably a decent upgrade. Yes, you lost backup quarterback Jacoby Brissett to the Browns, but who better to bring in to back up Tua than another former starter in Teddy Bridgewater?
Yeah, Teddy Bridgewater brings that, veteran, smooth leadership that Tua, I think, essentially needs. Going through the administration, if you will, from last time, from what we're hearing, affecting his confidence essentially a little bit. Now you bring in a head coach that's in his positive headspace, boosting him up a bit. and obviously the additions around him, but bringing in a quality veteran. We saw what Jacoby Brissett did last year, and no disrespect to Jacoby, but it just isn't there. And maybe a game or two you lead him in, but Teddy Bridgewater could actually take things over for a few game stretch. So I do like the addition, and again, the leadership qualities that he can instill in Tua, I think are speak for itself.
I'll add one thing on Teddy Bridgewater. I was with him at New Orleans when Teddy was back up there. I was there, and one thing for sure, his time spent the New Orleans Saints. Believe me when I'm going to tell you this, with Drew Brees and Sean Payton, that's the Harvard Graduate School of quarterbacking. I mean, that's the Harvard Graduate School of quarterbacking. And Teddy was a very astute student. Um, his talent level is varied, in my opinion, from what I've seen. But he can get it done, and he's been a good football player. And I watched him actually a couple of weeks ago. I was out of Miami practice. He still has the arm strength. It was, frankly, not the best offensive practice that I've ever witnessed. But um, Teddy Bridgewater's leadership abilities, his really knowing what the quarterback position must entail, that's a big boost for the Miami Dolphins.
Okay. Going into the fact that Teddy Bridgewater has had the background and career he has to this point, do either of you see there being any competition in the preseason?
I don't see any competition for the starting role because I believe Teddy Bridgewater was brought in not to compete with Tua, but just to kind of, again, give him that leadership aspect of it. Tua went through a whole regime where he's basically questioned as the starter. So I don't think that was the intent bringing Teddy in. I think it was more of a, hey, we're gonna give you somebody that can show you how to lead a team. Quite frankly, but I'm sure Teddy certainly feels a different way. So he's coming in to compete. So we'll certainly see as camp rolls around.
Yeah, well, from what I saw, being at their practice, Teddy, the question is not with Teddy Bridgewater. Excuse me, fighting fighting for a starting job. That's not going to be the question. The question to me, they have two questions with that offense. The head coach being able to implement his offensive background from San Francisco into Tua. And to me, and my question is, are those two guys going to get the job done? From everything because I saw a pretty good football team. But there's the question of the quarterback and the head coach. How are they going to move it all together and work it out? I frankly don't know enough to answer that at all. But that's where all the eyes are going to be. It's those two key. Those two guys are the key. Everything else today, I think they're pretty good.
I just want to key in real quick too. Coach Westhoff is referring to a practice that he went to, and he was not too happy about it. Made quite a headline about what he said about it.
Here's the thing: it made way more headline than it should have. Way more than it should have. I wasn't being overly critical of what I saw. Not at all. You can't help it when you're someone like me to look at a practice through coaching. I have coaching goggles on. That's the only thing I ever wear. And that's what I expect to see. Now, it's a mini camp practice. I don't expect to see a practice that looks like 3 days from opening day. But what people don't understand is so much of the media, because unfortunately, a number of them just don't quite get it. I want to see an offensive practice that shows me a game plan that's ready for the opening day of a mini camp. And I want to see it pretty good. Now, I'll take my background on offense and put it against anybody's. Because I spent most of my career with Dan Marino and Don Shula. And I coached offense. Oh, wait, then I went to the New York Jets when Vinny Testaverde was really pretty doggone good. And Chad Pennington came along. Oh, but then don't forget, we also had a guy named Brett Favre. And then I went to New Orleans with Drew Brees. So I have a pretty good idea what an offensive practice is supposed to look like. And if I tell you that I'm not 100%, it didn't knock me out, rather than get upset and get your whatevers in a bunch, you should maybe say, maybe Mike knows what the hell he's looking at. And that's what they should have done. I was not overly critical or trying to be demonstrative in any way, shape, or form. I made it clear that if the National Football League had a race, the Miami Dolphins win it easily. That's one of the fastest teams I've seen. They can fly. So they've got a chance to be a very good football team. If their offense would move in the direction that I saw the day I was there, they'll be in big trouble. But that's the question, and that's all I raised. So anyone else that doesn't like that should actually really try to be a real football fan and understand that the game, what it's all about, because I don't think they know anything. No, there. Now you know how I feel.
You can tell. You can tell it's early. Coach is ready.
I look at things through coaching glasses. That's what we do. I mean, I learned it from Don Shula. I mean, he did it pretty well. Everywhere I went, we were in the playoffs. I went down to New Orleans and I took what I did. They were ranked 31st when I walked in. When I walked out, we were first. So I'll put my numbers against anybody's. But that's where I learned it. You watch Dan Marino practice. You watch Chad Pennington practice. You watch, Brett Favre practice. You watch Drew Brees and Sean Payton practice. Whoa. Whoa. And you wonder why they're good on Sunday? I can tell you why they're good on Sunday. So, yeah, you brought up a sore point with me because I thought that was very overreacted and they should get a life.
You heard it here, guys.
Sorry. You asked me to come on. I didn't call you guys up.
No, I appreciate the enthusiasm.
So what do you want me to tell you? It's just the way it works. It's a tough business. It's a tough business, and every day counts. Didn't mean to steal your show up there.
No, that's great, Coach.
But that's why, see, go, guys. Move on, please.
By all means, Coach, you are way bigger than I will ever be.
No, I don't know about that.
All right, so moving on, the next position to discuss. Yes, you lost Philip Lindsay and Duke Johnson. You've also got Patrick Laird, Malcolm Brown, and Jordan Scarlett sitting still as free agents. You've re-signed Chase Edmonds, Salvon Ahmed, and have brought in Raheem Mostert, Sony Michel, and Chase Edmonds. Like, your running back core has made a massive change up coming into this year.
Yeah, I mean, listen, when you bring in someone off the street like Duke Johnson last year, and he basically looked like Walter Payton all of a sudden, there is issues with the running game last year. I think that was very clear. With Coach coming in, bringing in Sony Michel, he brought up Chase Edmonds. I mean, we basically, now I'm a fantasy show, and I can tell you I wouldn't draft any of these running backs as a fantasy owner. But right now, Miami has a great running back core, great running back stable. And I think they're basically just going to feed the hot hand. Obviously, Camp will say a lot. But look, I've watched Myles Gaskin over the past few years. He has an issue with hitting the hole hard, period. With Coach Daniels coming in, he talked a lot about, hitting the hole hard actually the first time he came in. So I was very excited to hear that because, quite frankly, I've been watching these running backs just kind of halfway hitting the hole. Hit it hard. We got Sony Michel, Raheem Mostert. We got a bunch of running backs, and I see a big improvement to help Tua out.
It's you bring up an interesting point to me. As a coach, if you're gonna study running the football in the National Football League, you better be watching the San Francisco 49ers. They know how to run the football. That's why they give the Rams such a tough time, because they can keep the Rams quarterback on the bench. San Francisco really knows how to run the football. The interesting thing will this new coach from San Francisco be able to transition that? I don't know the answer to that question, but one thing for sure, if they're going to be successful, then he had better be able to do that. But with that background at San Francisco, I think Miami should expect pretty good things.
And not for nothing, just one last quick point. If this team, if you just think about just the aspects of if they can get a running game going, especially early on in the season, it's hot, it's nasty down here. So get that running game going, get that defense on the field for long periods of time. Miami will be very successful early part of the season, to say the least.
It's a very good point. When I was there with Coach Shula, we did it sometimes with our offense with Dan. And he'd come out and go to a no huddle, and Dan's back there throwing the ball, and everybody, Duper, Marino or Duper and Clayton and Nat Moore and Jim Jensen and Joe Rose, and those guys are catching everything. And the other team had to be down there with their big dark uniforms on, their purple helmets, and and there it's 1,000 degrees, and we won a lot of games like that. We were very successful. So you bring up a very interesting point for the Miami Dolphins. But again, is the offensive line going to get it done? Is his coach going to get it done? Is his quarterback going to get it done? If they do that, then I think you bring up a really, really interesting point. They could become very competitive, and then they'll leave me alone for being critical.
I'm just going to point out two things real quick. Commish, you and I can both agree, having been in the division and following it for the past handful of years, when it comes to a third down situation, there's probably not a more dangerous running back than Sony Michel to have in the backfield. And it just blows my mind that I had Myles Gaskin last year on my squad as a solid flex. And looking at how far he's dropped on the depth chart because of who they brought in, I don't even see him being worth drafting.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I would definitely stay far away from him. Like I said, the first thing I brought up, look what happened with Duke Johnson, who nobody wanted to even sniff all season long. Miami brings him in, and all of a sudden he looks like Walter Payton out on the field. It was crazy. That just says where you have the issue. Obviously, it was at the running game.
All right. Before we step away from running game, there was one other move that I didn't catch originally, but on top of the halfbacks we'd already discussed, bringing in fullback Alec Ingold. It's a, what was it? 30 or 3.25 APY deal.
Yeah, so it goes back to what I think Coach is saying. It's implementing that San Francisco style running game into this offense. So we'll see how much of an impact it really makes. Again, it all goes back to just to piggyback off Coach. If Coach can come in and implement that system, it's going to be a great move. It's going to look great. If not, well, it's egg on the face.
Okay. Wide receivers. Probably the one that you're most excited to discuss here. On top of the fact that you've already got, hold on, let me restart that point. The moves that have been made this year, you've got Will Fuller, Alan Hearns, Isaiah Ford, and Tommy Lee Lewis sitting as still free agency. You've lost Devontae Parker to the Patriots, Albert Wilson to the Vikings, and Matt Collins to the Raiders. But you've added 5. Well, re-signed one and added 4 new faces to that room. Preston Williams re-signed. River Crackaft. I probably just butchered his name, didn't I?
That's okay.
Hopefully.
Brought him in from the Niners, as well as Trent Sherfield from the Niners. Cedric Wilson from the Cowboys, and one of the biggest blockbusters of the offseason, Tyreek Hill from the Chiefs.
Yeah, so, I mean, the Cheetahs here, the fact of the matter is, Coach, again, piggybacking off Coach, well, why not? The specialty, the Hall of Fame, essentially, best special team coach of all time has said it the best. It is speed, speed, speed for the Miami Dolphins. That's what they did. Let's get rid of, some of these halfway receivers. Devontae Parker, we've watched him over the years in Miami. Not to be overly critical, but the fact is the man had an issue with going after jump balls, it seemed like. Didn't really seem he had like that oomph to go get it. I don't understand why we traded him to the Patriots of all teams, but either way, point is, let's get rid of the kind of halfway in-betweeners. Albert Wilson was fast, but had the injury issues, didn't play during COVID, that type of thing as well. So you bring in speed. That's what this team is about. Tyreek Hill, obviously. A lot of people are like, well, Tua can't get him the ball. Listen, Tua arm strength is fine. We've seen it in the practice, but I will just say this. I am 45 years old. I got a decent arm, and I got to tell you, with these receivers, and if this line's okay, I could probably throw 3,000 yards with these receivers. I could just flick it to Tyreek Hill, and he could take it to the house at any time. Jalen Waddle the same way. who knows what they'll use, how they'll use these receivers too. It could be, are they going to try to use Tyreek Hill as Deebo Samuel? Maybe not give him that poundage that they do with Deebo, but they may end up using Tyreek and Jalen Waddle both as Deebo Samuel, maybe not to wear either one of them out. Got a great options either way. Love the Miami receiving core this year, obviously. And let me not steal it too much from Coach, but I'm piggybacking off the special teams legend.
Because they have such great speed. They also have a guy that's actually a very good friend of mine, and I talked to him a couple of weeks ago for quite a while. Wes Welker, their receiver coach. That was a very good move. He was an excellent player. As a matter of fact, the last time Miami made a trade to the New England Patriots for a receiver, that didn't work out too good for the rest of the world because it was Wes Welker. Yeah, thanks a lot, Miami. Because he killed Wes Welker went up to New England, killed the rest of us. But Wes is really a good football coach. I followed him at San Francisco. I've known him as a long time. In fact, I tried so hard to get him up to New York with me. I wanted him, and then we kind of held off for a second. And next thing you know, he's at New England. I was pulling my hair out. Plus, he was an excellent punt returner. That'll be interesting as to see if Hill's used in that fashion at all. Because you don't have to be a kickoff guy. I wouldn't do that. But as a punt returner, he was pretty good. So that's a weapon that they have. So their combination of speed, a very experienced coach, in my opinion, very experienced because of what he did as a player. That's a lot of good ingredients. Again, it all goes back to that guy. Can that guy get him the ball? And we're going to find out.
The point I want to mention during this, you kind of distracted me mentioning Wes Welker, arguably my favorite Patriot of all time.
I might agree with that.
A lot of that goes down to his talent, his story, and the fact that the guy was hysterical. Not going to go into detail, but I think you both know what incident I'm thinking of right now with that one. But
with the New York Jets.
Yeah. With the
I know. Yeah, I got it. Yeah, he walked right on the edge on that one. He's just a good dude. He comes over to the West Coast and goes fishing with me. We go shark fish. So he's a good guy, and was a great player, and I think he'll be a great coach. So Miami with that talent, they're right there again. The guy pulling the trigger. That's what it's going to come down to. We're going to find out.
Couldn't ask for a more talented former receiver to take on the job. So I see great things. But where I was trying to get to on this, looking back to since he just left the team or is still sitting on free agency, how much the tandem of Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks were able to elevate and make Deshaun Watson look like an all-star while he was in Houston. If there's any question about Tua Tagovailoa, looking at the squad he's got now between Hill and Waddle, even adding Gesicki into the mix, he's going to look like a complete all-star this year. I can see him coming out top 5 in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about top 5, but he certainly will be a big improvement. Like, as I said jokingly, I could throw 3,000 yards, and quite frankly, like I said, just a couple of flicks to, my biggest thing, though, ultimately is what I've seen from Tua is he doesn't want to make the big mistake. He's always in that position. He almost seems, I hate to use the word, but rigid almost, where I'm just too afraid to just let it go. So I'm thinking in my head, now again, I don't have coach's goggles, so to speak, but from looking at it from an outsider's perspective, if I'm a coach, I would say, listen, you have Tyreek Hill now. So when you're in trouble, just throw it as far as you can downfield, because look how many times Patrick Mahomes has done that, and Tyreek Hill has made something special out of it. So, again, big improvements for Tua, obviously, because of the weapons. Again, can he loosen up, I guess, a little bit and play a little bit more? Okay, I can let this ball go a little bit because I can trust the guys downfield.
Okay, not much has changed at tight end. Smythe and Gesicki have both been re-signed. Left tackle, Terran Armstead came in from the Saints.
Big move, yeah. Big. I was probably one of their biggest moves from the offseason to protect Tua.
I know him from when he's healthy, he's really good.
I was just
He's
about to ask.
when he's healthy, he's a really good player. He's gotten banged up some, but when he's there, he's very experienced. He knows he's a good player. It's just he's been banged up at different points and times. But you keep this guy on the field, you got a good football player. Got a real good football player. He can play that position.
All right, moving on with the improved offensive line. Left guard from the Cowboys, Connor Williams.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're just going. I mean, again, the improvement in the offensive line, again, from this year to last year. Last year, I think they were ranked 19th, if I remember off the top of my head correctly. In the offensive line, again, they just made improvements. So if you're from 19th last year, they're obviously going to move up a little bit. Implement again. We're talking about this running game. We've talked about, which again will just add more protection for Tua because now teams aren't like, well, we're just gonna sit, again, not like anyone was stacking the box against Miami, but our offense was very simple last year, quite frankly, and I think this year it's quite more complicated, and you're not going to be able to, do pretty much anything you want zone defensively against us. So again, I think the improvements in offensive line is just going to go up, and the offense is just going to look that much better, especially if we can establish that big running game.
Okay, moving over to the other side of the line. Since center, you're still solid. You still got, what was it, Williams? Yeah, Connor Williams. The one spot that you seem to have lost on, right tackle with Jesse Davis going on to the Vikings. Though with his contract, I'm not thinking that's going to be as huge of a loss as the improvements on the other end.
Yeah, I don't think he was that much of a loss, quite frankly. Again, with the additions in the line, no disrespect to Jesse, but, the improvements they made, I think they can shuffle this line as they go through the agents or go through spring training as well, if you will.
Moving to the edge position, huge deal re-signing Emmanuel Arba, APY of $16.35 mil, and bringing in some nice backup for him with Melvin Ingram.
Yeah, I mean, again, defensively, last year you saw the Dolphins, when they first struggled in the beginning of the season, the defense wasn't really finding its rhythm, so to speak. All of a sudden, it was, hey, let's go back to what we did the year previous. Blitzkrieg these quarterbacks like crazy, and all of a sudden, these cornerbacks that are there to make plays started making them. So yeah, again, the whole defense, I think, is going to look great this season, quite frankly, with the additions that were made, and didn't really lose that much. So yeah, great addition so far for the Miami Dolphins. Really like this defense going into this year.
At corner, Justin Coleman moved on to the Seahawks, but I'd see an improvement with the depth there. Bring in Keon Crossan. And anything else worth mentioning on the free agency?
Cedric Wilson, I don't we didn't mention him in the free agent round. I mean, if he stays healthy, again, we were talking about the speed of these receivers. He could be a great addition to the slot as well. So I think Cedric Wilson definitely is worth mentioning as far as free agency goes.
They've got on the coaching side two of my favorite guys, Patrick Surtain and Sam Madison. They've added to their coaching staff. They were great football players when I was there, and I certainly I don't know how they are as coaches, to be honest with you, but I know they were great players. They're good guys. I think there'll be very welcome additions to that staff. And when you look at the speed, and I'm no expert on that defense, I'm really not. But if you look at the speed that group has, the way the game's being played today, because football's fast break football today. That's what it is. That's just the way the game's being played. And when you can compete at that level, then you should have a chance. So From what I watched and from what I observed, that is a very, very fast group. And I only know those coaches, and I was very impressed.
Okay.
Plus two Miami favorites as well, for sure.
Yes, they are. They really are. They were great guys. I mean, I had a ball with them. They did some things for me, and it was really a very rewarding experience. We were good, and it was a lot of fun.
Um, Not a lot of action has happened with the draft. You only had 4 choices. However, I think you made the most of them. Starting with round 7 at pick 247, your third string quarterback. Yeah, I always start at the end of the draft and work forward. You know, save the best for
Right
last.
at the end.
Save the best for last, right?
Sure.
But Skylar Thompson brought in listed third string on your depth chart for the quarterback position. Between
again, you adding depth to this QB. Again, I like Teddy Bridgewater as a backup, but again, might as well take a shot on Skylar Thompson. He's had some, flashes in college, and essentially, does he fit the system? Of course, is the big question. With all these players coming out, do you fit the right systems? Got to be the right coach, right time. When we're talking about, since we're just talking about the draft, Cameron Good, I think was a good addition there. Again, going back to this defense, I think I had to write the stats down. I couldn't remember. But last year, we were basically middle of the road. That was essentially where the defense was. But again, I think it went back to the helter-skelter season that we had, where we started out, just basically not very good. And then all of a sudden, we were this resurgent hot team because of, again, good defensive play. So again, 14th versus the rush, 16th versus the pass. Channing Tyndale, Cameron Good, just adding depth to this linebacker core that, quite frankly, that was, I feel like, was the Achilles heel of the team last year. So again, as far as the draft goes, I just like that the depth that they were adding on the team.
Okay, you covered 3 of the 4 in that little analysis. The one that I'm curious to see where he's going to fit, I see currently the depth chart, courtesy of ESPN, has him listed as second on the one position behind Tyreek Hill. Where do you think Texas Tech wide receiver Eric Ezekama is going to fit?
It's a crowded receiving core, quite frankly. So I really don't know, to be quite frank with you. It seems as it stands now, it currently looks like, unless there's a injury or whatnot, he'll be the 4th man, really, to be quite frank, because he'll be playing behind Tyreek Hill. So unless, again, I don't see him playing the slot. That'll be maybe Cedric Wilson's role. Jalen Waddle's also be said to be playing in the slot as well. You have Preston Williams, who's kind of like that jump in the air, go get it guy. Quite frankly, I don't know where he's going to fit. This receiving room is very crowded, to say the least.
Definitely. I'd mentioned at the beginning of the show that we had some big news and something big that you have going on, Coach.
Yeah, to say the least. First of all, just one thing to go back to what you guys are saying. You've really missed out on a free agent, because you guys signed Tom Morstead, the punter. He played for me at New Orleans. In my book, I picked an all-star team. And in my 32 years in the National Football League, I picked him as the best punter I ever saw. I don't want to go back and coach any longer, because the game's changed so much. But if I did, I'd only want to have one punter, and that's Tom Morstead. And you got him.
Well,
He's not only is he very good at his craft, he's one of the best teammates that I've ever seen in my career. He's a great man. If you watch him in the weight room, you'd be astounded the way he works. His work ethic is off the charts. I mean, it's not even, you can't even find a chart to put his work ethic on there. That's the way and he's a great teammate. I watched their kicker, who I did not know at all. To tell you the truth, I just didn't know him. But when I was there, I was very impressed. He's got a very good technique. And so I see some very solid play in those roles. You add a punt returner, you're going to have enough guys because special teams have dramatically been reduced in the National Football League. That's just the reality. But you've got a couple guys there that are pretty good, and you've got one of them, in my opinion, is right at the very tip top in Tom Morstead. Now, to what I have, I wrote a book. I coached 32 years, and I wrote a book called Figure It Out. It's been released. Actually, in some circles, it's hard to get. It's been sold out. So it's pretty cool. We're very, very happy with it, and I'm very proud of it. You can get it anywhere now at Barnes & Noble, or the best way to get it is online through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, those places, or even through our publisher, Mascot Publishing. It's right there. There's a good picture of it. Thank you. It was a lot of fun to write. It took me a long time. It was a great way to spend a pandemic vacation. That's what I did, and I wrote this book. And we interviewed Barry Wilner. Is a reporter for Associated Press in the NFL. He helped me in the fact that he conducted the interviews. I would set it up, and then you're hearing Zach Thomas tell the story, but then he had interviewed him, and now you're hearing me tell the story. Excuse me, and then now you're going to hear Zach Thomas tell it, or O.J. McDuffie tell it. We had a little bit of a party here the other day over at my club where I lived in the west coast of Florida in Fort Myers, and Louis Oliver, who was a great football player for Miami, came over, and Kerry Glenn, and they stole the show. I mean, they stole the show. We had media members there, and it was really fun. John Gamble, their great strength coach, was here. And so those guys, Zach Thomas wanted to come, but he was on a trip. He couldn't get it to cancel. We were disappointed in that. But it was really a fun thing. And Lewis and Kerry stole the show because the stories they told and how much fun we had. But I'm very proud of the book. I think people will very much enjoy it. The reviews have been, I'm very proud of them. They're kind of off the charts. So, yeah, figure it out. I promise you'll enjoy it. It's a fun book to read, and it's a great story of, when I first got into National Football League in 1982, I did not come in as a special teams coach. I didn't know anything about it. I ended up becoming that and found a way to realize that it was very little innovation, very little creativity, and zero regulation. So I could become very creative and pretty much do whatever I wanted. And that's what I did. And I helped. I think I did way more than help. I think I kind of directed, but I'm a little bit cocky. But I was part of, that's for sure. I was part of an era when that part of the game reached a pinnacle. It had never been before, and it will never go again because the rules have so dramatically affected it, and they've changed the way it's played. It doesn't mean it's less important, because it's not. You just don't have the number of plays and variables. So that's why I don't want to do it anymore. Plus, I'm getting too old for it. But no, actually, I'm not. I could go do it in a heartbeat. But it was fun for me, and I loved it, and I'm so proud to have been a part of it. And I think this book dramatizes that. And then you're gonna you want to hear about being a good punt returner? Read the book and see what O.J. McDuffie has to say. Not me. Listen to how he describes it. That's Larry Izzo was that great player for us at Miami when I was there and signed him. Zach Thomas being an integral part of drafting him. So if you're a Miami Dolphin fan, Louis Oliver and Kerry Glenn, they changed the rules in the National Football League because of what we did. It's a great story that I'm very, very proud of.
Yeah, listen, even if you're not a Dolphins or a Jets fan, it just as a football connoisseur, Coach's book's got great stories. I'd love to hear those little inside part of the league. Definitely go check it out. It's been great. I noticed Coach on Facebook actually yesterday had all this, his party. I think it was yesterday or the day before, whenever it was. Friday, yeah. I typed in the live chat, where was my invitation? Like, I don't know. Chopler over here. Like, see Louis Oliver. Listen, Louis Oliver, I'll never forget that game in Buffalo. I don't if anyone ever talks about that when, Brian Cox gave him the two-finger salute as they walked in, and the game he had there, that lived in Miami infamy forever. So big Lou, big shout out to you. That was great.
That's interesting that you picked because a lot of people, you could argue that as a defensive back in all aspects of a game, that's one of the greatest games ever played by an individual.
Absolutely.
Ever. Against a great football team. I mean,
Absolutely.
they were very good. And what he totally dominated, he made every tackle. He knocked the ball down. He intercepted the ball. You bring up a very, very good point. That's one of the great games in NFL history, the way that guy played that day.
I remember being so nervous before that game, as you alluded to. Buffalo was so good back then. We had such a big rivalry between them. And I remember reading how Brian Cox was talking about how he hated Buffalo wings, hated Buffalo this. And he walks in, gives them the 2-finger salute. And I'm like, what is going on? And then oh my God, I'll never, ever forget it, Coach. It was unbelievable.
Those were good days. That was a good football team, and in a lot of ways, it's a shame. And of course, with Dan at the very height of his career, that we just couldn't get to that final game. But there it just was. We were a little bit lacking in a couple areas, and Buffalo was really very, very good. But it was a part of a great organization, and a lot of fun for me. That's for sure.
Funny quick story, and we'll move on. I actually worked for Full Circle, as things seem to go in life. I worked for Dan Marino's restaurant here in Orlando when I first moved up here. And of course, who comes to sit at my table other than Thurman Thomas, the great Thurman Thomas? So his wife sits down, and I just being Mr. Cut Up, I'm like, hey Thurman, listen, I got to tell you. I absolutely respect and love your game, but I can't stand you, quite frankly. You never let my team get all the way. Now, his wife loved what I said. He certainly didn't. So just thankfully she tipped, though, so we're good.
Now, sorry, drop my paper. But I have not had a chance to get to the bookstore yet. But believe me, this is on the top of my list. And for anybody watching Mooncutter Sportscast, you're obviously a sports fan, most likely football fan, since that is a majority of what I've covered. Definitely get yourself to Barnes & Noble, Borders, wherever.
Or
Amazon.
go online. Go online and go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Actually, Barnes & Noble online sold out. Or at least it was the other day. We've done pretty well.
Nice.
Go online. Go to Amazon online. Order it online through Amazon. They'll deliver it to you in a couple of days. You can get it. That's the best way. Or Mascot Books. That's the publisher. They'll get it to you the same way. And you can buy it in any form. You can buy the audio book. You can buy the Kindle version. A lot of people like that. They read them on their iPad. You can get a hardcover or a soft cover. So there's several ways you can get it. But thank you for saying that. And I think people will enjoy it. But there's ways to get it. Getting it online is the easiest way.
It's probably the route I'm going to be taking as soon as we get off this interview.
Thank you. Please do.
Now, the last part, which tends to be the most fun, but we're going to go now and break down game by game, give our predictions as to win-loss record for the season. I know all three of us have a certain level of bias on this. I see me and Commissioner Cooper being at two different ends of the spectrum, and Coach somewhere in between.
And I also have the least amount of knowledge about the team than you do. You guys study it closer than I do. I'm just a fan. I watch on television. My allegiance has very much been with the New Orleans Saints, because they were the last team I was with, so I follow them the closest. And then, of course, I still keep in touch with the Jets. Matter of fact, I'll be at the Jets practice on Wednesday, and I'll make sure that I don't upset any of the little soft guys that I must have upset at Miami. So I'll be careful up in New York.
That is soft. I love it.
Wow.
Excuse me.
That's great.
The Jets don't seem to have any problem at all welcoming me to come to their practice, so I'll just make sure I don't step on anybody's toes. I want to throw up.
Well, look,
Excuse me.
That was great. So we're talking about, the Miami Dolphins. Listen, I think you're going to be, I don't know. I'm not that fan that's like, oh my God, because listen, I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. I'm used to this hype and letdown. I am so used to it. Coach, we were talking about back in the day. I used to, back in the day, I used to make these big cutout things where I would would draw the other team's logo and write down what happened during the game. This is, we were back in, I was in the military, I would do it just because we didn't have the internet. It wasn't as cool back then. And I'll never forget when we had one of the greatest teams. I think it was 94, if I remember correctly, or 98, one of those years. I mean, we had home field advantage throughout. And Buffalo, of course, comes in, and Thurman Thomas has the single game at that time for individual yards. It's just like, I'm so over this disappointment as a Dolphins fan. They're tattooed on my back. I'm not going anywhere. But man, am I tired of the hype and letdown. I got to tell you, mediocrity has been our ceiling for too long. I'm over it. So the fact is, you look at this team and you look at the schedule. If you want to talk about, we might be a little too long. We talk about every game. But it's not easy. This AFC is a tough road to hoe this year. The AFC East, obviously, you've got Buffalo to be concerned with. So, we have our problems playing with them anyway. So maybe we split with them. That's the hope. Patriots are a good team. I don't know if they're, any blowout of a team, but they're definitely good. The Jets are definitely much better, quite frankly. Give hats off to you guys. Great offseason for the New York Jets. They look good. Again, not blowout, but they're, I think, about on par with the Patriots, quite frankly. I think we're just a little bit better than them, and no disrespect, of course, to your Jets. A little bit better than the Jets and the Patriots, but not as good as Buffalo. So where does that put us? That puts us in a murderer's row, quite frankly, because when you look at the AFC West, look how stacked the AFC West is. Are we going to be able to make a wild card? I don't know. It's going to be tough. Tough season, quite frankly, for the whole AFC entirely. But I'm going to go if I have to make a bold prediction today, I'm going to say 10 to 11 wins for this team. I think is definitely on point for them. Again, though, is that enough to get to the playoffs and make some noise when you're in there? That's going to be the key question for me. We can talk about individual games, but just as far as the season in general, that would be like my prediction, so to speak, for the team.
11-6. I'm going to agree with most of what you said. I think the AFC East is hands down the division to watch this year. I think it's going to be the biggest dogfight. Yeah, obviously it's Buffalo's division to lose right now based on what we've seen from the squad they have and the fact that they haven't really lost anybody. But the Patriots, ever since Tom decided to go south, they have fallen off a little bit, but any Bill Belichick team is still going to be dangerous. Between the Jets and Miami, they're both up in the discussion now. I think it goes down to which team has improved more. And it might be a bias here based on what has been brought into both. But I personally think the Jets take a slight edge on that one. But I'm not writing anybody out. I definitely see a floor of 6-11, a ceiling of 9-8 for Miami.
Well, if they hit that floor, heads are gonna roll. That's all I have to say. You can't go 6-11 with the talent on that squad. That's for sure.
Coach, you got a take on this?
No, I don't have the knowledge of both of those ball clubs like you guys do. That floor of 6-11 for Miami does seem that seems a little bit out of the realm. There's a lot of talent on that football team. They'll really have stumbled and fallen if that's the case. And there probably would be some interesting discussions that would go on after that. That would be very difficult to see. I don't know. And I don't know how high they can go. I really don't. To me, it just comes down to two things from what I've seen. It comes down to how the quarterback's going to do and how this new head coach can get things implemented and what he'll be able to do. I frankly, I don't have any idea. I don't know. I don't know him well enough. I only know the little bit that I saw, so we're going to find out. The Jets, the one thing I am pretty sure about the Jets, I think they're the best prepared to go into a season that I've seen them in the past 10 years. In the past 10, I believe that. I remember there was a couple years ago, I remember watching them on television one night, and thinking to myself that I don't know if they have 5 guys on this football team that could have played on our good teams. That's the way I looked at them back in. But I see a little different football team now with the New York Jets. Now they've got they've got a relatively new head coach, but I saw some. I'm going to root for them. I saw some pretty good things. The quarterback, there's some ups and downs, but I saw a couple of things last year that he impressed me. I also know that last year, that was a first-year offensive coordinator working with him. Now, as the season progressed, I saw some pretty positive moves from him. Will he take that next step? I don't know. But if they do, now the New York Jets have got a really, really, really tough part of their season at the beginning. Ooh, they've got to weather the storm because it's tough. If they can hang in there, then I think maybe they can have a realm of success. If they could win a couple games out of their first 6, if they could somehow win 2, and I know that sounds not much, but then they might be able to hang in there with a winning season. I think that's a possibility. But I kind of like the way the moves that they've made. I would agree with the commissioner. It's been a good offseason. You never know till we see it. But technically, and you look at it on paper, you look at it now just in the news, I think to myself, these guys did some pretty doggone good-looking things here, and it'll be fun to watch. I think they're better prepared, and we'll see. I don't have all the answers. I'll know a little bit more when I'm up there, and I'm anxious to get a chance to see them. I have not done that for a while, but I'm excited to go and watch and to do that. And don't get me started.
We're all excited to hear your opinions.
Nah, I'm going to be careful. I'm going to be careful. I don't want anybody crying over what I said, for crying out loud. Like I don't understand an offensive practice. I've only been with the best ever. Okay, good luck.
Coach, I'm going to point out that the Jets' first 4 weeks they're touring the AFC North.
Yes.
Of that division, I think the only team that isn't, how do I say this without being too strong? The only team I'm really worried about in the AFC North is Cincy.
It's a good point, and I think there's some interesting points there. Baltimore's always dangerous. Now they're Baltimore's dangerous. They just are. They've got there's some good football players on that team, and John Harbaugh's done a nice job coaching that football team. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be a little bit better than what people think. I think this quarterback situation that they're going to have is going to surprise people. I look for, maybe I'm wrong, but I look for Pittsburgh to be better than what maybe they're getting credit for. We'll see. You bring up an interesting point. Where's Cleveland going to be in all this mess? And that's very interesting to see. I don't know why. I just think that those teams are going to surprise everybody and be a little bit better than what they're getting credit for. And believe me, I'm a rank amateur because I'm just watching it on television. That's all I'm doing right now. But my experience over the years tells me that look out. They're a little bit better than what everybody thinks they are.
Coach, we're just watching it on TV too, man. So don't worry.
You're not wrong.
But it's a great point, though. You brought up about the Browns. My wife on my show, she's our in-house lawyer since I don't have to pay her. And she's been we've been following this case for a while. And she's told me all along she don't think a year suspension is going to happen for Deshaun. So if that's the case, if Deshaun Watson, a healthy Deshaun Watson with the Chubb and Hunt, and you got Amari Cooper, the addition of Amari Cooper to that squad, and already a great defense in Cleveland. Watch out for Cleveland too. So it makes the whole AFC again a very tough road to hoe this year.
Yeah. Well, hopefully Deshaun Watson will get straightened out. That was after I finished. When I retired, I did some consulting with colleges, and I loved it when I did it. Clemson was one of my schools. I met him when he was a junior in college, and I've been very impressed with his play and really him as a young man. I think he's got some issues that I hope he can get some help with and get straightened out. That's not the way to conduct your life, and I hope that I was a fan. I was a fan of his, and I hope he really does get. I hope he gets a second chance, and that he straightens it all out and he moves along and moves forward with his life. Um, I knew him just a little bit, but with the reputation was very, very good. And so I hope that all comes around and gets straightened out, and he gets himself on the right track, and and can move forward, because he was, well, he was a good football player. And the little bit that I know, I remember walking into Clemson and them talking about him, telling me how he worked so hard. He was there, he finished his education in 3 years, the dedication that he had. And then to see something so dramatically negative happen to him, I just hope it all straightens out, because I was a big fan personally, and I hope that he can get going back in the right direction. Everyone deserves a second chance, and I think he does, and I hope it works out for him.
Yeah, not to get on a long Deshaun Watson rant, but again, when we looked over, we've been looking over this since last year. We looked at the evidence. We looked at a lot of the stuff, quite frankly. My wife really got into it and showed me a lot of it. Quite frankly, when you're a player talking to a massage therapist, I'm a licensed therapist. And so I know what the adductor longus muscle is. He is literally articulating what muscle he needs that is tense on him. It's not like he's like, hey, you got to rub in between my legs or something like that. Literally, is naming the muscle and ask them if they are comfortable with it, quite frankly. So, again, going back to the whole, when you look at this thing as a whole, it's very odd that all of these complaints are from the same lawyer. That generally happens with these types of lawsuits too. It's the same lawyer. All of a sudden, all these new people come to light. Again, not to say everything he did was correct, but it's, to me, to shun Deshaun for what the totality of actually what he did is completely ridiculous. He's already spent a whole year not playing football. Let the man play football. Let's go. Sorry.
I wish I had thought to bring this article up. I wasn't honestly expecting us to go into depth with Deshaun Watson, but I do recall reading a report that mentioned the league has offered a plea deal, for lack of better terms, of 8 games. I know the stance on that, forgive me for not having the source, but the stance on that was that it's likely because the league doesn't have entire faith in the judge ruling in their favor, and that it's likely the actual sentence passed at the end of this will be much shorter. So what do we think? 4 weeks max?
Well, just again, it really just from what we've seen, it really just depends on what the judge is going to say. And I mean, again, as looking at everything in totality, they didn't press criminal charges because, I mean, again, what did the man do wrong? Quite frankly, he names what muscle he needs, and again, coach can speak to this better than I can. I've never walked in these athletes' shoes. Same thing I said about Tiger Woods a long time ago. I'm not going to judge someone where I've never been in that situation. I've never had women be like, hey, I'm rubbing here, and oh man, this, what I mean? Where it's like, hey, so I'm not going to judge Deshaun Watson if they were, again, if they're a little starstruck and they're doing stuff. And, again, as a therapist, I do know when you rub those particular in that area, a reaction from the male species is that your penis gets erect. Period. That's what happens to a lot of people. So if that's what happened, and then whatever whatever it is, what it is, quite frankly. But again, how can you demolish the man? How can if there's no criminal proceedings? And again, he's settling right now because he just wants this to go away. He's not an admonishment of guilt. So we'll see what happens going forward, but I hope it is on the lighter end.
I know this much: I have absolutely zero desire being in the middle of that conversation. That's for sure. I am sure of this, though. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of the National Football League. I have tremendous respect and confidence and faith in Roger Goodell. I'm a big fan of his. I know that the NFL does things very, very. They care a lot about what goes on in all aspects of life, and I know they'll make the right decision. I firmly believe in that, and I'm going to root for this young man to straighten everything out and do things correctly. So I believe that it'll get done right. And as I said, that's the intricacies of it or something. I'm not this. That's just never for. I wouldn't know enough anyway. I don't have any knowledge of it. I'm going to root for the National Football League and for Deshaun. I hope that they can get things going and he can move in the right direction because I just remember a good young man that somehow some things got awry and I really root that he gets everything back together and everyone does it correctly. I believe in the system and I think it'll work.
And I'm 100% with Coach. Great point there. I'm rooting for the league in this. Essentially, the league is better with Deshaun Watson in it.
All right, and I'm going to root everything for that young man to have his life back on track because that was a guy that did a lot of good things in a lot of different ways, and I'm certainly going to root for him and the business. So I think there's a lot of good people here that'll make the right decision, and I'm not being the slightest disrespectful to anyone else involved in it. I just hope they all straighten this out and get back on track.
Okay. I very good points. And I like the approach to the mentality on that one, Coach. I think you might have swayed me to adopt more of the same. I know we're at just over an hour in at this point. I wanted to bring up real quick
Yeah, guys, you're going to have to go because I'm going to have to leave here pretty soon. So you guys, you push me to the end.
All right,
I'm running out of gas.
All right, well, Coach, I want to say thank you for coming on. There was just 3 brief questions that.
Go ahead, do them. Good. Then we're going to go if it's all right with you.
That were more team based. So if Adam, the host of Sports Talking With, had sent in 3 things that he wanted discussed. How much growth do we see from Jalen Waddle in his second year?
Well, you should see a lot. I mean, again, a full offseason with Tua. He actually has an offseason with Tua to kind of mend. They already kind of had a bit of a chemistry, but obviously to add a little bit more. So obviously, I think it'll be big growth, especially with this new system.
Second question he asked was, with the addition of Tyreek Hill and the extra coverage being drawn, how much of a jump in stats do we see with Gesicki being able to get more open?
Well, it goes back to the old, again, what Coach has been saying earlier, what type of this, if he's putting in that McDaniel San Francisco offense, you should see a lot more uptick in Gesicki. Look how effectively they use George Kittle in San Francisco. You're going to see the same, not to say Gesicki is Kittle. However, he is a decent tight end, and I think he'll definitely see an uptick, at least in targets, which means hopefully more catches.
And I'm going to say, forgive the little direction he's pushing with this last question, but I believe he's taking this into account, the fallout we saw last year between Mahomes and him. But he wants to know, what's their prediction on how long until Tyreek Hill gets pissed and wants out of Miami?
Hopefully never would be my answer to that. And again, it just depends on, obviously, if you've seen anything from the offseason too, I've seen a lot of Tua and Tyreek hanging out. They've been on podcasts together. You've heard the rumblings with Tyreek has come out and said Tua is more accurate than Mahomes, causing a little bit of ruckus, that kind of thing. So I think they're building camaraderie, quite frankly. I think Tyreek, he lives not in Miami. He wants Miami to be his home. So I'll be honest with you, I just don't see it happening. And maybe that's just me wishful thinking, but that's from what I'm seeing so far.
All right. Thank you for that, for taking the time for those 3 questions. I want to say, once again, Commish, Coach, thank you guys both so much for giving me your time this morning. I've greatly enjoyed this conversation. Do either of you want to give plugs for any social media or whatnot for the Mooncutter fans to look you guys up?
Yeah, absolutely, Coach. Go ahead and plug where we can find you both one more time.
I'm involved in several of them. I'm so what's a rank amateur at social media. Denise, who does manages it for me, is tremendous. Though anyway, is we're happy with. It's just been a method of promoting my book, of which, as I told you, I'm very very proud of, and the people that have helped me with it. So that's what it's been for me. It's all been quite a ride. I've enjoyed my career. I had a long time, and I'm very happy with the way it's kind of ended, or not necessarily ended, but to come to a little bit of a close with this book. And I think people will enjoy it. And I'm glad you put in a plug for me. So thank you. Figure it out. And that's means very, very important to me and something I'm extremely proud of. So thank you.
And listen, if you can't find it, you need to figure it out. That's what you.
That was pretty
Yeah.
good.
So if you guys can visit tssfantasy.com, we got all of our latest and greatest up there. We have actually a new thing that we're doing, a show on your fantasy league itself. So you want to check that out on tssfantasy.com. Like I alluded to earlier, check us out on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. We're having all kind of great contests. Right now, it's the Hall of Fame Leroy Butler jersey. He came and visited us for our Packers show. That was really fun. So you want to check that out. All of our shows actually in the summer have featured every NFL team. So if you're a fan of any team in particular, go check it out. We had lots of great guests from all different types. We had old offensive lineman John Fina for the Bills, all kind of different guests. So it's been great. Even Disney's Imagination Movers came for the Saints show. We've had all kind of crazy stuff. So come check us out. TSS Fantasy, the fantasy show of the people.
All right, guys. This has been Joffrey Curry. You can follow me, of course, as always, at Mooncutters on Twitter, at TJE Joker on Twitter. That's my personal page, at TJEGEOCUR. And make sure you're following us on YouTube now that we have our own channel, Running Force Productions, which Mooncutter Sportscast is a proud member of. This is Joffrey, being joined today by Commissioner Cooper and Coach Mike Westhoff, signing off.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.